After a tiring day at work, Zhaoke finds a suspicious package on his desk. As soon as he touches it, he is sucked into a horror game called Infinite Postman. The objective is to carry out missions to return to the real world. The protagonist was determined when he discovered the rewards. The story begins on an ordinary night. The protagonist Zhaoke is about to close the restaurant. The last customers praise the chef's talent. Zhao thanks him without much emotion on his face. After the meal, the customers pay and leave. The protagonist closes the restaurant and turns off the lights. He finally feels that he can rest after a busy day, but when he looks to the side, he sees a box. Zhao imagines that some customer ended up forgetting. He touches the box, and the next moment an eye appears on the seal. Suddenly a green light invades the place, and the protagonist is sucked into the box. Zhao reappears elsewhere and does not understand what happened. He wonders if he ended up sleeping, and this is a dream. Suddenly a voice starts calling him. Zhao turns around and finds several people who also don't know how they got there. He realizes that he still has the knife he used in the kitchen and keeps it without people seeing. At that moment, a person in a suit appears from behind. This is the representative of the game, and he welcomes everyone. The boy with glasses angrily asks what is happening. The representative replies that thanks to the box that everyone received, from today on they will have a new identity. The protagonist asks what he means by new identity. The man in black gives a scary smile and says that they are in the Infinite Postman. Obviously, those people don't understand anything, and everything seems very confusing. The representative details that the 6 people who are in that room will be postmen and will enter other dimensions to complete tasks from time to time. Of course, it won't be for free. Those who manage to complete the missions will earn great rewards. The blonde guy asks if he's talking about money. The man in black displays a gold bar and says that the reward is called post-credits. Only one post-credit can buy this gold bar that is worth $300,000. This information improves the mood of some people, but not everyone is liking the idea. The representative decides to give the last information and says that something not very good will happen if they fail the mission. The blonde girl asks in fear what will happen. The man replies that the loser will be murdered. The players start to sweat cold, and the representative wishes them good luck. The next moment, smoke begins to cover them and slowly dissipates. The protagonist realizes that they have been teleported to another place. The players begin to fear for their lives and try to think of a strategy, but they don't have much time because soon the ground begins to shake and a deafening roar is heard. The guy with glasses asks them not to panic because as much as there will be a hologram. Suddenly a shadow begins to appear behind the boy. He reassures the players in front of him, saying that it must be a kind of ghost hologram. The next moment, a few drops of drool fall on his head. He looks back and realizes that it wasn't a hologram. The huge claw hits the head of the boy with glasses and leaves a fatal cut. It was such a fast movement that the players didn't have time to keep up. They just ran for their lives, while the bear roared behind. The blonde guy ends up falling and asks for help, but no one has the courage to go back. The man is soon destroyed by the bear. The 4 players who were left managed to take a considerable distance and only heard the colleagues' cry of despair. Zhao finds a tree nearby and decides to climb. The girl asks him not to be so selfish and also help others. He replies that he is not trying to escape the monster, he just wants to take a look at something. Zhao realizes that he was right and can see a light in the distance, which means that there is a house and there may be hunters there. He passes this information to the other players and together they decide to go to the house. The protagonist is the first to climb the hill towards the light he saw, and the others follow behind. At that moment, the girl with black hair pushes the blonde down. The guy screams, and she tries to disguise it by saying that it was the girl who fell alone. But the guy is sure of what he saw and goes down to help the player. The black-haired girl just calls him useless and says that now it's going to be 2 for the bear. Zhao looks at her, and the girl gives a satisfied smile. The next moment, he kicks her face and also knocks her down. The protagonist calls her selfish and makes it clear that he prefers a useless one who risks his own life to save others. After this disagreement, the players go back to climb the hill. The blonde girl is almost at the top when suddenly a hand pulls her with all its strength. The guy who is behind her thinks the worst, but Zhao also stretches his hand to him and tells the guy to hurry. The player takes a deep breath, realizing that it was just the protagonist. The 3 of them successfully climb up and start heading towards the house, while the black-haired girl continues downstairs. Suddenly, she hears a fawn in the bushes, and when she looks, she notices a human hand. The girl is happy that she is not the only one left alone and touches the hand. But this was just a trap. A man in a suit appears, and the girl's eyes fill with horror. From afar, the players can hear a scream and assume that the bear has made another victim. The protagonist encourages everyone to keep walking, The blonde girl fears that that player has found the bear. But Zhao says that they should forget what was left behind and move on. The players agree. A few minutes later, they arrive at the house. Zhao doesn't have a good feeling. On the other hand, the players went towards the front door hoping to find help. The protagonist takes the knife and decides to be attentive because he smelled a suspicious smell. The guy knocks on the door, and Zhao quickly notices the red stain. Inside the house, a cauldron prepares a soup with skeleton bones. Outside, the girl keeps knocking on the door. The protagonist can't forget the smell he feels coming from inside that house. As a cook, he knows it's not ordinary food. Suddenly, a lady opens the door and invites them to enter the house. The girl asks if she lives alone, and the old woman replies that her son is away. Zhao enters the house suspiciously. The lady offers to put some beds on the floor for everyone to be comfortable and says that tomorrow she will ask her son to help them go down the hill. The players thank her. The woman turns her back and offers some food. Zhao begins to peek into the cauldron and notices a green soup inside. The lady quickly assembles the plates with the green goo and large pieces of meat. The girl smiles, saying that it is delicious. The old asks why the protagonist did not try it, and he replies that he was not hungry, so she kindly offers a water. At that moment, Zhao puts his foot in the old woman's path, and she trips. He grabs her by the neck, and the player screams, asking what is happening. She tries to say that the lady was just trying to help, but the protagonist trusts his instinct and puts the knife to the old woman's neck, asking what she put in the food. The player tries to convince him that he is wrong and asks him to put down the knife, but Zhao just pushes him away with a precise kick to the stomach. The guy is thrown away and falls with a pan on his head. The girl calls him by the name of Qi Liang and asks if everything is okay. Suddenly, she realizes what fell from the pan and screams that it is human flesh. Zhao says he was right and strikes the old woman in the hand the moment he tries to free himself. He advises her to answer the questions if she doesn't want to be hurt, but the woman begins to transform and throws the knife away. In a matter of seconds, she takes the form of a bear. Zhao suffers a sequence of attack and manages to dodge. The woman keeps trying to hit him and pushes him to a table, then advances with her claw to destroy him. The protagonist sees the attack passing inches from his face. The bear prepares to bite when suddenly he feels a strong pain in his head. Zhao realizes that Liang saved his life. The boy puts the chair aside and asks if he's okay. The protagonist doesn't have time to warn and just kicks Liang with all his strength away. The guy doesn't understand anything and asks why he's doing this to someone who saved his life. Suddenly, the bear gets between the two, and Liang believes that the protagonist used him as bait. At that moment, Zhao yells for the boy to run. He obeys and is almost hit. The protagonist took advantage of the fact that the bear was on his back and attacked, but at the same moment the creature turned and stopped the knife with its mouth. Zhao quickly has another idea and uses the bear's body to gain momentum. The monster tries to stop the next attack with his hand, but the protagonist went unnoticed and hit his neck. The animal fell to the ground, lifeless. Liang is startled to see the head near him. The protagonist reaches out to lift him. After that, the two join the girl again and notice the terrified expression. The girl points to the bear's body and asks if they have seen that. A game window appears and informs that the mission is to eliminate Junior the bear. He is very similar to his mother, only much stronger. The message ends by saying that players will be punished if they don't complete the task. The guys look at that panel wondering how they are going to do it. The girl remembers that the bear they saw was much stronger than this one. The protagonist says that they have no other choice but to eliminate that bear. Liang repeats that Junior Bear is much bigger than that, but Zhao says they should try anyway. At that moment, he finds the kettle with the liquid that the old woman tried to make him drink and says that it is definitely not a good thing. Then takes the bear's head and says that they need to survive. Liang agrees. The protagonist prepares himself, and the guy asks what the plan is. Zhao explains that he will make the bear Junior drink the soup that his mother prepared. Liang asks how he intends to convince the bear. The protagonist says he will prepare a bait. A beast would probably be happy if he came home and saw his prey tied up. Liang looks on surprised as Zhao smiles. Minutes later, the protagonist's plan goes into action. The cauldron boils that suspicious liquid. Liang and the girl are tied up while Zhao lies on the floor and pretends to be a corpse. The girl looks worried and touches the protagonist's foot, asking how long they will wait. He just tells her to be quiet and trust the plan. She agrees. Suddenly, the door opens and a bald man appears. Zhao manages to notice that the guy's foot is big and assumes that he is tall. Meanwhile, the Tide players start to tremble. The man throws a female arm on the ground, and Zhao immediately realizes that it is the woman they left on the hill. Now it's certain that this guy is Junior the bear, he goes to the boiler and tries the suspicious soup. Liang can't stand being in that position anymore. The protagonist mentally asks for his plan to work. At that moment, Junior Bear has a strong feeling of dizziness and falls to the ground. The protagonist gets up with the knife in hand. Liang says that if he had known that the plan was going to work, he wouldn't have let the protagonist cut off his leg for real. It turns out that they needed Junior Bear to smell red liquid and not suspect that it was a trap. So Liang served as a guinea pig. At that moment, the girl helps him with the wound. Liang praises Zhao's plan and asks what they're going to do now. The student asks him not to distract the protagonist. But then the guy approaches the fallen body of Junior Bear and says that she doesn't need to worry because this guy won't wake up anytime soon. The next moment, the man gets up and holds his neck with all his strength. But the protagonist easily passes the knife through the bear's throat. This time he falls to the ground unconscious forever. Zhao reassures Liang, saying that that suspicious soup really worked, which means that the bear wouldn't be able to hurt him even if he hadn't been hit in the throat. The girl soon asks if now that they completed the mission, they will be able to return home. The protagonist remembers that this is exactly what the man in black said. Suddenly he realizes something and says, scared to the other players, that they were wrong. Liang asks what he is trying to say. The protagonist says that this is not Junior the bear. This would explain why the man did not turn into a bear, and no game interface appeared saying that they completed the mission. The players fall to the ground in disbelief. The girl asks if the whole plan was in vain. On the other hand, Zhao tries to understand what happened and where the real Bear Jr. is. He believes that there must be some clue nearby about this man who was confused. Suddenly, a knife on the counter catches his attention. Zhao realizes that he will be a great help and hands over the girl, telling her to use it if she needs to defend herself. Meanwhile, Liang thinks about the fact that they have confused the man. Suddenly, he hears a deafening roar and notices that it is the real bear. At that moment, the animal invades the place, destroying the wall. Then he advances towards the players, ready to destroy them. Zhao gets in front of his colleagues and tries to push them as fast as possible. The bear's huge paw ends up knocking down the wall, and they are thrown away. The players resume their positions, and the protagonist faces the bear. He lets out again that roar of his that almost makes everyone deaf. The girl holds the knife in front of her own body and asks if they can handle it. At that moment, the animal's attention falls on the gun that the girl is holding. He has a fit of rage and runs towards her. A loud bang is heard, and smoke appears. The protagonist manages to dodge, and Liang runs with the girl to the other side. He takes a deep breath and asks if she is okay. But when he looks, he realizes that the girl no longer has a face. Unfortunately, the bear managed to hit her in the attack. Without thinking twice, Liang runs towards the animal with anger in his eyes. But a slap from the bear is enough to throw him away. The guy coughs up red liquid and quickly gets up. The monster prepares a new blow when suddenly the protagonist draws attention to his mother's severed head. The next moment, he throws his head into the cauldron and attracts the fury of the bear. The animal tries to recover the head while the protagonist grabs an axe and tells Liang to run. Zhao carries the injured colleague to the outside of the house, but he knows that he will have to abandon him if the bear gets close again. At that moment, Liang stops and he asks what is wrong. Liang puts his hand on the injured part of his belly and tells the protagonist that he can't stand running anymore. So he asks for the axe and tells his friend to go alone. Zhao tries to argue, but Liang says that his leg was already injured at the beginning to use as bait, and now he has a new cut, so he knows he won't be able to walk for long. The protagonist takes a deep breath and makes the decision he promised he would never make. He puts the guy on his back and says he will carry him. Liang refuses, saying that if he does this, the two will end up being found. The protagonist does not care and decides to leave there with his friend. He remembers the path he took and believes that he can get a considerable distance from the house. At that moment, Zhao jumps off the hill, and Liang asks why they are no longer hearing any footsteps from the bear. This question makes the protagonist realize that they have probably fallen into a trap. As soon as he looks up, he sees the bear bringing its paw close to his face. The protagonist tries to back down and is hit in the belly. Zhao writhes in pain as his friend falls to the ground. Liang lifts up and holds the axe firmly. The protagonist realizes that he will have no other choice and punches the player's injured leg. Liang falls to the ground and asks what he is doing. Zhao soon calls the bear's attention and says that it was Liang who cut off his mother's head. He even encourages the monster to attack. The bear advances towards Liang, and before hitting, the protagonist manages to push his friend away. A crater opens up underneath the monster, and he falls in. Zhao realizes that his plan worked. He checks if Liang is still alive, and an information window appears, warning that he has completed the main mission and can return to reality to receive the reward. If the boy prefers, he can stay in this space for another 10 days and return to reality whenever he wants. Suddenly, some voices are heard from inside the hole where the bear fell, and when the protagonist approaches, he realizes that 2 players who stayed behind are still alive. At that moment, the black-haired woman begins to disappear and says that she is eager to return home. Zhao wonders how she could have completed the mission if she stayed behind. He assumes that the woman somehow managed to figure out what the mission was, and now that it has been completed, it can also return to reality. On the other hand, the guy who stayed inside the hole had to amputate his own arm. The protagonist took a rope that he found nearby and jumped into the crater. Looking closer, he realizes that that guy is not a player. It's probably some hunter who lived nearby and cut off his own arm to lure Junior Bear. Zhao starts to be suspicious and asks how he got here. The guy says it's just a farmer who lives on the hill below and asks for help to get there. He even offers money for it. But the protagonist quickly turns his back and says he won't help anyone who is about to pass away. The guy replies that his injuries are not that serious, and even Wang Xiaochong didn't mean to hurt him. He then offers to tell a secret in exchange for help. The protagonist thinks about it when suddenly another panel appears, presenting the secondary mission of rescuing the injured. This task is different, and he has no obligation to complete, so you can go back to reality whenever you want. The protagonist decides to help the guy in exchange for knowing who Wang Xiaochong is. He agrees and starts talking about that Wang Xiaochong is also a hunter like him. When they met, Wang told about a family that lived near the hill and his ancestors were civil servants. Both told this to other people, and together they went to the house, hoping for the family to help in the dry season they were going through, but they were attacked by a bear. When they reached the hill, he remembers that he only managed to escape alive with Wang. But the guy wanted to go back, and he didn't. Wang used the argument as a distraction to cut off his arm and use it as bait. Wang's plan from the beginning was to murder the bear and then look for that family's fortune alone. At that point, the farmer ends the story and tells the protagonist that he can now keep the family fortune, since the bear has been destroyed. In addition, the hunter also offers a cash payment if he helps him. The protagonist realizes that this guy was planning to steal the family, but if there is really a fortune, it's not a bad thing. At that moment, someone starts calling Zhao, and he says he's his friend. But before going, he extends his hand to the farmer and says that he has to promise that he's not lying. The guy starts to stutter. Zhao quickly erases the hunter with a blow to the neck. He says that the guy is in this state as a result of his own actions, so he definitely won't save a thief. Then he goes towards the bear and uses his knife to open the body. At that moment, Liang looks for his friend and asks if everything is okay down there. Suddenly, the bear's paw advances towards him, and the player falls backwards in fear, but soon realizes that it was the protagonist who threw it. Zhao makes an excuse saying that he thought he wanted the claw. Liang looks suspiciously at the paw and replies that he prefers not to take it. The protagonist says that it's okay and ties both paws to take it with him. The player soon questions if he knew about the trap in that crater. Zhao replies that he wasn't the one who did it and didn't even know, but remembers seeing a red circle marked on the map and decided to see what he had. Liang says that at least the mission was completed and they can go back. The protagonist encourages the player to leave and says that he's going to stay here a little longer. He says goodbye and says he hopes he doesn't find any good-hearted idiot like Liang next time. The guy smiles, and before disappearing, he says his phone number. Zhao smiles and says he'll see him when he can. After that, he walks with the bear's paws tied to his back like a bag. The guy thinks about the information he has collected so far and believes that the fortune was invented by the bear himself to lure people to the hill and consequently eat them, but maybe it's best to check now that the bear has been eliminated. A few minutes later, the protagonist arrives at the house. He looks around and goes towards the bedroom. Soon he finds a chest hidden under the bed. When he opens it, he sees only 4 shiny stones and an outfit. Zhao is disappointed and tests the clothes to make sure it is worth a fortune. But as soon as he puts it, his hand begins to turn into a claw. Zhao gets scared and receives a notification saying that he has won a special item called Bear Clothes. He will now have access to the low-level stamp album with a capacity of 10 stamps. Special stamps provide skills. The protagonist feels an energy in his hand and calls for the stamp album. The next moment, a notebook materializes. An energy surrounds the album and then shows the page with the first seal. The bear's outfit is a special seal and increases his current strength by twice as much. He also supports the bear transformation for 15 minutes and can only transform again after 3 hours. Zhao decides to test his current strength and with one blow destroys the chest completely. He is surprised and wonders what his strength will be like when he activates the bear's transformation. The protagonist also remembers that those stones have become a common seal and decides to materialize in his hand. He succeeds and says that this is how the man in black managed to magically produce a gold bar for them. The boy is happy to realize that he can now produce things. He decides to test this by creating the seal of a kettle and soon after bringing it back to reality. After the test, Zhao realizes that when he turns an object into a stamp, the item remains the way it was before the transformation. He returns the kettle into the album and has an idea: if he transforms all his belongings and puts them in the album, no one will ever know what he takes, and he will have nothing to worry about. A little later, the protagonist looks outside the house for things that can be turned into a seal. He touches a huge rock and is denied permission. Zhao wonders if it's because of the size and tries to turn the gecko into a seal, but again the permission is denied. He deduces that living things cannot be transformed. At that moment, a notification appears saying that the mission to bring the wounded to the hill failed. Zhao closes the album and decides it's time to move on. He remembers that farmer commented that he lived nearby and assumes that there is a village there. A few minutes later, the protagonist finds the village. He walks among the villagers and feels that the whole place stinks. It seems that people are abandoned after the drought. Anyway, it is better to get some useful information. He approaches a lighted restaurant and thinks it is the best place to get information, since there are some people gathered. The attendant comes to him and asks if he needs a meal or accommodation. Zhao replies that he intends to eat, but prefers to cook his own food. The attendant is about to refuse when the protagonist removes one of the silver stones and offers it as payment. The guy opens a big smile and takes him to the kitchen. Zhao is left alone and starts using the ingredients he put in the album. The protein of the meal is bear meat. He quickly finishes the dish and the customers look at him with mouths watering. Zhao tells the men that they can try it, but pulls the plate to himself the moment the customers get close. He offers the food in exchange for information about a place where he can have fun. Suddenly, a man approaches from behind the customers and says he knows a place where he can have fun. He can earn a fortune. The guys recognize this man as a big liar who always comes to the restaurant to tell lies about a rich place. Zhao realizes with his high-level nose that this man has a familiar smell and soon concludes that he is the senior bear. At this point, the man tries to reason with the customers that he is not a liar. He swears he's telling the truth and says he has a rich family that lives east of the hill. The guy approaches the protagonist with an evil smile and asks if he wants to make a fortune. Zhao just questions what kind of person the guy thinks he is at. That moment, a man in a white shirt approaches and says he knows a place to have fun. It is on the north side and the house is called Xiangshan. The man says embarrassed that there are many nuns there. The guys next door also turn red when they hear this. The protagonist thanks him for the information and leaves the meal to the informant. He decides to go to Xiangshan house and looks back saying that it is good for the senior bear to try his own son. Meanwhile, the bear starts to eat and praises the meat at that moment. The attendant happily says that this dish was prepared with the bear meat that the protagonist hunted on the hill. The guy ends up dropping the meat when he hears the word bear. Zhao hears the man's desperate cry and moves on. He asks a villager how he can get to the Xiangshan house. The guy asks if today he is prepared for fun and points with his hand forward, saying that just goes straight until the end. Zhao easily finds the place of adult entertainment, but finds it strange because he expected to meet many people and everything is empty. At that moment, a voice asks if he needs to confess. The protagonist turns around and finds a nun. He wonders if this is what the men were talking about. Zhao hands over a silver stone and agrees that he is there to confess. The woman smiles and says that it's almost dinner time, so she invites him in. The protagonist agrees and asks why it's so empty. The woman replies that the other knights are resting in the back aisle while waiting for dinner. After that, the nun opens the door to one of the rooms and tells him to make himself comfortable. Zhao enters and soon another girl appears. The girl in a low-cut dress hears him sneezing and asks if everything is okay. She takes some tea and offers it. The protagonist is lost with the girl's beauty and looks carefully as she puts the tea on the table. The woman goes towards him and begins to hug his body, while asking if it's the first time and that's why he's nervous. Zhao is petrified and can't answer. She laughs and goes back to the table, then hands the tea to the protagonist. He takes it to his mouth and pretends to spill it unintentionally, then apologizes and says he was distracted by her beauty. The woman replies that he should be more careful and dodges her hug. Then she hugs him from behind and whispers that she is only worried about his cold. The protagonist tries to hug the girl again, and she again dodges. The woman says that he must get ready for dinner and jokingly adds that she will receive a lecture. Zhao fakes a smile and says that he understands. After that, the woman closes the door and walks away. The protagonist returns to his normal expression and looks at the tea, smelling the same smell as before. He even thanks his nose for working so well. The boy decides not to waste time and uses the album to find the hidden dangers of this place. He goes towards the cafeteria and leaves a seal activated. As soon as he arrives, he notices some men accompanied. They all have the same familiar smell. The same girl from before appears and calls for him. The two sit at one of the tables, and she says that the sermon is about to start, then offers a drink. The protagonist forces a smile and pretends to drink, but uses the album to turn the drink into a stamp. The girl is satisfied and starts to compliment the way he drinks. Zhao gives a smile as he smells coming out of the girl's mouth. Her perfect sense of smell kicks in. A few minutes pass, and she continues to offer more and more drink. The protagonist has the help of the album to get rid of all alcohol. Suddenly, he ends up telling the girl that he loves her body. The protagonist regrets having said something like that and wonders what is happening to him. The woman's breath turns into smoke and enters Zhao's nose. He becomes less and less sober. The other men continue to have fun with the women behind. At that moment, the girl climbs on top of the protagonist and confesses that she knows that he did not drink any drink that she offered, but in the end, that liquid would not be responsible for making him drunk. Suddenly, the girl pushes him on the ground and says that she will make him happy. Zhao tries to regain consciousness and asks why he is feeling drunk. He remembers that he didn't have any drinks and realizes that he needs to get ready. The woman starts to take off her clothes, and he happily finds the knife. At this moment, the protagonist has a vision. He sees the women turning into snakes and waiting for the right moment to attack the men. Zhao looks towards the girl who is on top of him, and she asks if there is something wrong. In the protagonist's view, the woman also turned into a snake. Suddenly, the attack starts with the other men. Some are eaten, and others have their souls sucked. The snake feels the human chi nearby. Zhao suddenly sees a red sphere come out of the snake's mouth and believes that it must be something very valuable. The snake on top of him asks if there is something wrong, and the protagonist tries to distract her. He can't let the woman realize that he has left her illusion. At that moment, the snake says it's time to have fun and tries to bite his head. The protagonist prepared in advance and hit the snake easily in the neck. He ends up drawing attention, and that nun from the beginning appears. She asks what he's doing. Zhao assumes the fighting position and is confident because he has not yet been subjected to illusion. At that moment, the nun turns into a snake and advances to attack him. The protagonist stays in place and removes a cauldron from the seal, then hits the snake's head with all his strength. He thanks him for putting everything he found in front of him in this album. After that, the boy makes his way through the snakes to the red sphere. As soon as he gets close, he shouts the word transform and sends the sphere to the album. The protagonist successfully lands on the ground and looks back smiling. The nun runs after him, demanding that he drop the yoke. Zhao just says he wants to go back to reality. At that moment, the snake passes through his body and he disappears. The nun screams in frustration. The protagonist is teleported back to the restaurant. He says he has finally arrived home and realizes that the box is still on the counter. The boy wonders if the album came together and soon calls for it. The notebook materializes in his hand, and he is happy that he was able to bring it to reality. The protagonist checks the red sphere and discovers that it absorbs energy to improve strength. It can also be used to forge a weapon that is capable of causing hallucinations. But excessive use can lead to death. The real effect of the hallucination depends on the skill of the person who forges the weapon. The protagonist hoped that the gem would have more power, but just making those snakes angry was worth it. After understanding the new seal, the boy decides to check the box and is congratulated for completing the mission. Now he is a low-level postman and has gained a new seal. Zhao checks the album and again some improvements. His speed has increased by 30%, and he has also gained the invisibility of 5 minutes while in the forest. The latest information says that the player should not reveal his abilities to ordinary people unless he eliminates the witnesses. If using the skill recklessly, will be punished in the next infinite space. The protagonist thinks that the form of punishment in this game must be horrible. He also believes that all infinite spaces are the same as the first. Zhao decides not to think too much about the bad part, and remembers that the man in black said they could buy whatever they want using the post-credit. But when he sees the store, he realizes that the amount is much higher than he thought. Now he doesn't have enough money and decides to rest. When he wakes up, he will think better about what to do. At that moment, the protagonist goes upstairs in the restaurant and enters his room. He lies in a coffin and quickly falls asleep. His mind goes back to the time when he was little. Zhao starts watching from above his child self in the orphanage. He doesn't know why he is dreaming about the past. The protagonist lands on the floor and says that everything seems very real, but he can't remember what exactly the dream memory is. Suddenly, his child self looks at him and gives a scary smile, saying that Zhao doesn't remember because it's not his memory. The protagonist gets scared and jumps out of the coffin. He wakes up in a cold sweat and gets up. Zhao holds his head while complaining that he can barely remember what he dreamed of. Suddenly, something comes into his head, and he asks, scared, if that thing has come back again. The boy runs to a sink and washes his face. He repeats to himself that he is sure that his schizophrenia has been cured. Anyway, it is better to go to the doctor tomorrow. At that moment, a man appears from behind and puts the gun on his back, saying that the boy is trapped. The protagonist asks how long he will continue playing. The guy puts on the handcuffs and replies that he will do it until he falls. Suddenly, Zhao points the gun towards the man, and he asks, confused, how he managed to do it. The protagonist hands over the pistol and confesses that he took it as soon as he put the handcuffs on. The policeman hands over the keys to the handcuffs and says that he looks different since they last saw each other. This policeman is called Lei Ku. The protagonist has considered him as a brother since the orphanage. Zhao asks that next time cannot break into his house like a bandit. The brother replies that he has a reason, and the protagonist asks what he came to do. The guy questions if he really doesn't know or is playing dumb. The brother points to the food made with bear claws on the plate and asks if he doesn't know that he is breaking the law. He starts to eat and says that he will only let it go because it is very good, but makes it clear that next time his brother will be punished. The protagonist just laughs. Suddenly, he notices something strange and remembers that he did not cook at any time after he returned. The brother notices his expression of concern and asks if something went wrong. Zhao disguises it by saying that he probably forgot some spice in the food and asks what his brother came to do right here. Ke lights the cigarette with his own gun and replies that he came to warn him that he can no longer neglect the traffic lights. The protagonist says that since the orphanage, he has always been very proud of what he did. The guy replies that he is only assuming his responsibilities. Then he gets into the subject of his girlfriend, but decides to let it go because he remembers that the protagonist talked about going to Dr. Wong. The brother is very worried. At that moment, the protagonist takes on a second terrifying form and tells him not to worry. Zhao quickly realizes what he is doing and returns to normal. But his brother seems not to have called. The protagonist hands over a card and says that he knows that he probably wants to do something for his girlfriend. Ke thanks him and promises to pay it back as soon as possible. Zhao tells himself that he is afraid he will not be alive when his brother returns. At that moment, Ke looks back and says that he will continue to love even if he turns into something else. After that, he closes the door and the protagonist is alone. The boy starts to put away the dishes and sees his reflection in the red puddle. The reflection quickly takes on the second scary identity and talks to him. Zhao ends up dropping the plate in fright and touches his own face. He ends up conflicting with his second personality, which warns the protagonist that he can't get rid of who he is. The next day, the alarm goes off. Zhao remembers the long night he had yesterday and says that he has nothing more comfortable than sleeping in a coffin. Suddenly, something catches his attention, and the protagonist feels a different energy. He tries to understand if it is his schizophrenia or just an illusion. The boy comes to the conclusion that he is in his normal shape and wonders how long he slept. He feels well rested and believes that the coffin is responsible for improving 100% of his mood. Thinking about it, the boy decides to put the coffin in the stamp album, so you can sleep comfortably wherever you are. At that moment, a notification appears to warn you that the object is too big to be turned into a stamp. Zhao understands that he will need to increase the level of the album first. A little later, he says goodbye to the last customers of the restaurant, then sits down to rest and sees that there are 3 days left for the next adventure in the dark world. But before the day arrives, he decides to ask a question. At that moment, in another place, a cell phone rings. Liang answers the call from an unknown number. The protagonist asks if his leg is okay, and the guy even drops the watering can in surprise. He says that all his wounds were healed when he returned to reality, and when he got home, he found a package. The reward he won was an album of stamps. Zhao moves his cell phone a little away from his ear when he hears Liang's excitement. The guy keeps saying that the next task is in a few days and they need to get ready. Suddenly, the phone vibrates, and he sees that the protagonist has hung up. Zhao confirmed his assumptions about the stamp album arriving for the other players who have completed the mission. Now his goal is to prepare for the next journey, obviously with the help of the album. Suddenly, psychiatrist Wang enters the restaurant and calls for Zhao. He gets scared and hides the album. The woman smiles and says that she came to visit because she was passing by. She asks if he is okay, since last time she suggested that the boys sleep in a coffin. Zhao happily replies that everything is fine, but Wang doesn't believe it and asks if they got back again. The protagonist just turned his face away without answering. She deduces that she is right and starts to leave the restaurant. The doctor says that he should go to the office in a few days and promises to get medicine that will control his mood. For a moment, the other personality of the protagonist finds an opening and complains about the psychiatrist. He says that he hates sleeping in a coffin and needs to get rid of this woman as soon as possible. The protagonist tries to regain control of his body but can't. The other personality says that the doctor can still be useful and will find another way to take out this anger. At that moment, Zhao opens his eyes and realizes that all that conflict occurred only in his head, which makes it clearer that schizophrenia has returned. He notices a box that he had not seen before on the table, but assumes that it is the same as before and that he ended up forgetting about it. At that moment, the boy returns to the album determined to see his label collection for the next task. He is startled when he sees that the 3-day time is up. The protagonist does not understand anything and is dragged by a hand into the box. This time he reappears in a river, and with a civilization ahead, Zhao leans on a boat and comes out of the water. He notices 2 figures and soon apologizes for disturbing, justifying that he accidentally fell into the water, and that's why he invaded the boat. For a moment, everything is silent, and the protagonist starts to sweat cold. He wonders if he did something wrong, so they don't answer. At that moment, Zhao comes closer and realizes that they are not people. In fact, they are paper dolls. Anyway, this brings a relief, and he takes a deep breath. The boy picks up the album looking for information and remembers that the last time there were 3 days left for the task, but suddenly he was teleported. This means that he has lost the memories of the last 3 days. The protagonist already suspected this mental confusion and is increasingly sure that his schizophrenia is controlling his body. The album gives some clothes for Zhao to change. He can't forget the fact that his other identity has spent 3 days controlling his body. The only thing the protagonist fears is that someone has been injured in this story. Now he decides to put his thoughts aside and uses the doll's body to make a fire, then prepares the bear meat so he doesn't go around on an empty stomach. While eating, the protagonist hears some footsteps approaching. He soon uses the album to keep all that mess he made and hides. At that moment, a fireball descends from the sky and turns into a chariot. The people carrying the chariot are floating. The protagonist realizes that those are ghosts. They are dressed exactly like paper dolls. At that moment, Zhao starts to break out in a cold sweat for fear of being found. He realizes that those ghosts are approaching and tries to make the least movement possible. Zhao holds a knife in his hand and turns to observe where the ghosts are, then realizes that those things are looking at him. The protagonist covers his mouth and retreats in doubt if he was really discovered. At that moment, the boy, who looks like a paper doll, says he has the feeling that something is wrong. Suddenly, 2 people escape from one of the houses when they are discovered. The boy quickly instructs the ghost guards to destroy these men and any living person who is here. The ghosts obey and start hunting those guys. Zhao remains hidden in the boat behind and counts on the luck of the ghosts not noticing him. The protagonist understands that those men who are running away are also postmen who were sent on the same mission as him. Anyway, he just wants to get out of this whole situation unscathed. At that moment, the postman starts shooting at all the ghosts that appear in front of him. The boy gets angry because his escort is totally useless and decides to deal with the situation alone. He summons some soul-devouring ghosts and sends them to the bottom of the river. The postmen keep resisting and use the gun as a defense by hitting those things in the water. The guy ends up getting distracted, and when he looks, that demonic boy appears in front of him. He pushes him towards the ghost in the lake. The postman tries to escape, but is devoured in a matter of seconds. Soon after, the second postman is also caught. The demonic boy realizes that he has finished the targets and tells the men of the carriage to move on because the path is clear. Everyone obeys and continues walking. Meanwhile, the protagonist becomes more and more distressed. He noticed that those men who were consumed were 2 experienced postmen, and even so, they were no match for the ghosts. This makes him more afraid since it is still his second mission. But the protagonist understands that being afraid will only get in the way and thinks it is better to think of something from the album to survive. At that moment, someone extends a scarf for him to wear on his face. Zhao gives a gentle smile and thanks. Suddenly, his face is horrified, and he looks confused at the person who is offering the handkerchief. It is a woman, and at first glance, she seems to be very kind, but the protagonist recognizes that it is that female paper doll that he found as soon as he got on the boat. Without thinking twice, the boy invokes his knife and intends to get rid of the doll before it catches the attention of the ghosts. Suddenly, the girl approaches and starts to dry his face. She calls him dear and asks if something went wrong. Zhao is surprised and tries to understand if she called him sweet. The woman laughs and asks if there is anyone else on the boat besides them. She also asks if the protagonist thinks he is being mistaken for someone else. Zhao is embarrassed because he remembers that he burned the other male doll and now believes that he is being mistaken for him. His thoughts are interrupted when the boat starts to shake and he loses his balance. The woman asks the protagonist to be careful and says that they're almost there. Zhao asks, curious where they're coming. She says that they are crossing the river Styx to enter the underworld. The doll ends up noticing his expression of confusion and asks if he has lost his memory. The protagonist lies, saying that he is getting a cold and ended up forgetting some things, so he asks her to tell everything that has happened so far. The girl agrees. A few minutes later, the protagonist rethinks all the information he has gotten so far. The woman's name is Tsuilan. The man who was used as a bonfire was called Doggy Wong and was the head of the mediums. Even unintentionally, the protagonist was lucky enough to use the medium as a bonfire, since he had a high rank and could harm his life in the future. But in general, all the people who are here are servants of the bride. At that moment, a notification arrives from the game informing that the mission is to sabotage the ghost wedding of the Bai family and leave the underworld. To go unnoticed by the ghosts, he will have to eat ashes of mediums. This makes the person get the appearance of a corpse for 3 hours. The protagonist smiled satisfied and thanked himself for not throwing away Doggy's ashes. He didn't know, but it will be very useful now. At that moment, Suilan goes to him and says that they are already close to Bai's house. The protagonist walks to her while collecting her husband's ashes. He looks at the Bai family mansion and agrees with her that it is really impressive. His sense of smell soon kicks in, and he notices a familiar smell. Zhao looks around and easily finds other postmen who have reached the underworld just like him. The men also notice his presence and wonder why he has a psychic next to him. One of the guys replies that he thinks the protagonist is a novice postman. Zhao assumes that the burning smell he smelled when he arrived here was because the experienced postman burned the other mediums. The protagonist understands that they are a little confused to see a living medium next to him. Suddenly, the gate of the Bai house opens and catches everyone's attention. The carriage with the ghosts appears. Zhao feels butterflies in his stomach as he remembers that he will have to deal with these creatures to complete the mission. The image of the postmen who were attacked is still alive in his head. He takes a deep breath and eats some of the ashes he kept in the album. Zhao gets off the boat with Suilan and asks if she knows how they can get back to the world of the living. The woman asks if he forgot that there is no way to go back. The protagonist looks at believing while she explains that their original bodies were burned, so there is no way back. Zhao realizes that the mission is much more complex than he imagined. In addition to sabotaging the wedding, the postman will have to leave the underworld. But at that moment, all the boats they brought are being destroyed. Zhao understands that he is in trouble and decides not to take any action before finding a way out of this place. If he is discovered, he will probably be murdered and will be trapped in the underworld forever. At that moment, the butler of Casa Bai invites everyone to follow him. The protagonist and the other postmen observe every detail. They arrive in the courtyard, and the man begins to share the rooms that each one will stay. Suilan pays for the services and is interrupted when she goes to ask for something. The butler makes it clear that no one can go near the bride's room and will be punished if something like this happens. Suilan reminds him about the rule of not hurting any guests, but the man just smiles and asks what she is talking about. He adds that he is willing to throw anyone who does not comply with his rules into the river. After that, the butler turns his back and leaves. Suilan looks at the protagonist frustrated. He realizes that for now, he doesn't have the slightest chance of getting close to the bride, but he will find another way to complete the mission. At that moment, Tilan guides people to look for a room to rest. The postmen begin to separate. The protagonist notices that the men do not talk to each other, probably because none of them want to form an alliance, but it is understandable since the rewards are shared. The more people complete the mission, the fewer rewards each of them will receive. So most of the postmen prefer to act alone. At that moment, he enters one of the rooms with Suilan. The woman talks about the way she was treated by the butler. She believes that all this will change when the bride officially joins the Bai family in 7 days. The woman lies on Zhao's body, and he continues trying to collect information, asking why the wedding won't be today. Suilan laughs, saying that it's the kind of thing that only happens in the underworld. Zhao caresses his body while asking what they can do in these 7 days. The woman replies that he knows very well what he should do. The protagonist pulls her close and asks if the wedding will happen even if the bride or groom is murdered in the underworld. Suilan gets scared and pushes him back while covering the melons. She scolds him for saying that and says that it is dangerous if anyone hears. At that moment, Zhao has an idea of how to solve the mission. He then creates a false expectation in the woman, saying that it is time for fun. She gets closer and closer and says that she really wants this. Suddenly, the protagonist puts her to sleep with a blow to the neck. Solon falls unconscious, and he finds the opening he needed. The protagonist covers the girl before leaving the room. He understands that these 7 days will be important to get information. The moment Zhao opens the door, someone calls him. The postman Dongzi says that he is a lucky man to have gotten a woman as soon as he arrived. The guy forces a friendship and says that he is sure that this woman gave him a lot of information, then hugs him and asks if he doesn't want to share. Zhao slaps the guy's hand and says that the information they have must be the same. Deep down, the boy understands that no postman knows that the wedding will take place in 7 days. But he is not stupid to tell either. Dongzi starts to follow him and says that other postmen are also looking for information. He invites him to go together to spy on the commotion that is happening in the front yard. At that moment, the protagonist's advanced sense of smell comes into action, and he notices a different smell. When he looks, he realizes that he is a player. He soon understands that all the postmen have formed an alliance. Anyway, the protagonist refuses to go with them because he doesn't know if he can trust them yet. Dongzi advises him to form an alliance because things here are dangerous. Zhao just leaves in the opposite direction. Dongzi then says goodbye and also leaves with the other postman. The protagonist understands that the commotion in the front yard can be very good to get new clues, but he also knows that the 2 pages are there, so he prefers not to run the risk of being discovered on the first day. At that moment, the boy smells the food and starts to head towards the kitchen. As soon as he arrives, he notices several cooks preparing perfect dishes. Zhao is surprised that even in the underworld there are people like that. His attention is soon attracted by one of the guys who makes a move with the pan. He comments that he is wrong, and the man angrily asks who he is to judge him like that. Zhao replies that he is only saying that he is wrong. The disciples start pushing him out of the kitchen, and he is stopped by the chef. The man asks the protagonist what his mistake was. Zhao crosses his arms and reveals that the sesame he put ruined the whole dish. The chef yells that this is. The protagonist goes to the plate and says he will taste it for him. At this moment, the boy stirs the food and removes chopped garlic from the album. He serves a dish and puts garlic instead of sesame, then offers it to the chef. The man quickly changes his mind and confesses that the protagonist really was right. He says that now it makes sense because his lady didn't like the food. At this moment, he takes Zhao to some dishes prepared by him and asks the boy to give his honest opinion. The protagonist tries the sweet and sour pork dish. He doesn't understand why it's so cold. Meanwhile, the chef keeps asking for his opinion on the flavor. Zhao smiles, saying it's good. The chef brags, saying he tried hard. On the other hand, the protagonist realizes that all the food here seems normal, but even so, it still smells sour. He tries to understand if it is because he is a living person. At that moment, the chef says that he is very nice and asks why he has never seen him before. The protagonist realizes that he is not able to distinguish the taste of the food and will have to abandon the original plan. He bows to the chef and replies that he came here with his master for the official wedding. The man replies that he understands. The protagonist took the opportunity to say that he is also a cook and that he would feel safer if he prepared his master's food himself. The chef looks suspiciously and asks if the boy is suspicious of him. Zhao shakes his hands negatively and says that he just wants to get familiar with the kitchen. After that, they go back to work, and the disciple warns that there is a lack of oil. The chef replies that it's okay because he's going to fill up. The guy pulls his hair back and his skull opens. Then he pours the liquid he kept inside. Meanwhile, the protagonist leaves the kitchen and passes by some postmen. One of the men stares at him suspiciously. Zhao returns to the room and realizes that he is drawing a lot of attention like a rookie postman. He understands that he needs to act faster. At that moment, Solon says that he has a lot of energy and went around after making her so tired. The protagonist hugs her and asks if she thinks he is a good husband. The girl confirms and asks why he smells different. Zhao does not answer, and she says that it is better to wash because at dawn they will receive new tasks from the butler. By the protagonist takes a little more ashes from the album. He thinks that body temperature and style of dress can also give away postmen disguised as mediums. This means that relying on ashes is not enough. So he asks Solon how to know if the person is a medium or not. The woman replies that he really forgot a lot. She explains that the name of her masters is written on her arm. At that moment, the girl takes her arm to check and realizes that there is nothing written there. Zhao laughs, saying that he was discovered and grabs the woman by the neck. He confesses that he is not her husband and In an instant passes the blade down her throat. The protagonist holds his head while saying that there is only one different thing between the mediums, a living person, would already be cold, but Suelon still seems to have bright eyes. The woman's face paralyzes in the last expression he had when he discovered that the protagonist was not her husband. He thinks about how he will hide this body without being discovered, then uses the album, and the body is easily transported. But the head has been denied. The protagonist wonders what he is going to do with it. His attention is drawn to a large pot, and he decides to leave Suelon there for the time being. Suddenly, a voice outside demands that everyone go out to pick up the tasks. The protagonist covers the woman's face and says that maybe he can find her alive when he leaves the underworld. He goes to the courtyard and meets with the other postman. Zhao feels that he is at an advantage because he managed to get the entrance token from the back kitchen. The butler finishes delegating the tasks to the postman and notices the protagonist alone. He asks where the woman who accompanied him earlier is. Zhao replies that he hasn't seen her since he returned from the back kitchen. The butler gets angry and yells, asking how he got into a forbidden place. The protagonist shows the token proving that he has permission. The butler quickly backs down, recognizing that it is the chef's token, and apologizes. He tries to fix the situation by saying that the protagonist is a very good cook and should stay in the best kitchen. Zhao realizes that just one token was enough to gain respect. The butler keeps making excuses. Dongzi watches the scene from afar and grits his teeth in anger when he realizes that the protagonist is much more advanced than him. Now he has even gained respect from important figures. Zhao notices the tense atmosphere among the postmen and has an idea. He offers a silver stone to the butler and starts dragging him away. The guy is happy with the reward and asks what he should do. The protagonist, he explains that his wife has disappeared. The butler interrupts him and says he can leave it with him. Zhao delivers another reward and asks him not to tell anyone about it. The guy promises that he will find her and will not tell anyone. After that, he turns to the postman and says that it is time to start the tasks. The protagonist is satisfied that his plan to distract others has worked. Now he just has to start working in the back kitchen. A little later, Zhao observes a group of postmen working. He believes that staying in the back kitchen is better to get information, but he also thinks that the Dongzi alliance is advanced. He jokes that he hopes the guys brought extra food like him. At this point, Dongzi shouts to the other postman that he doesn't want to stay another minute in this hell. The girl tries to calm him down by saying that they still have enough food and will find a way. Besides, the group of other players will not make it past this week. Dongzi laughs listening to this and says that he goes to the bathroom before continuing. The guy soon moves away from the team and opens the album. He uses the special seal called Master of the Chase and gains the speed of a cat. Then it goes through the whole forest and arrives where the protagonist is working. He starts to peek and suppresses the sound of his own footsteps so as not to be discovered. Dongzi tells himself that he needs to deal with this newbie who has befriended the top echelon. The postman removes a knife from the album and realizes that Zhao has buried something in the ground. At that moment, the protagonist starts to leave and feels a strange sensation. He looks around and sees nothing. Dongzi waits for the right moment and goes to the pile of sand left by Zhao. Starts digging, thinking he will find some treasure. Suddenly, something touches his hand, and when he pulls, he finds Solon's body. Dongzi gets scared and the body starts to touch him on its own. He tries to push the girl away and can't. The guy realizes that it was a trap by the protagonist. At that moment, a voice asks if he was waiting for him. Dongzi looks back and feels something pierce his chest. Suddenly, the guy falls to the ground with Suelon, and someone puts his foot on top of his body. He looks at the protagonist angrily. Zhao says he didn't think Suelon's body would fit so perfectly. He takes the cloth off her head and thanks her for helping, then says he will fulfill the promise he made to her. Dongzi looks incredulous. Zhao says he would be ashamed to end up this way, even though he is an experienced postman. Dongzi replies that he already knew that he had used the stamps and congratulates him on the victory. Suddenly, a notification appears to warn that the postman Dongzi offered 3 special stamps. If Zhao accepts a deal, it will be signed, and the guy will stay alive. They will not be able to harm each other in this space. The protagonist will also earn 1/3 of Dongzi's income. Zhao thinks for a moment and says that he didn't know he could surrender in this game. Dongzi laughs and advises him to accept because he won't win anything if he leaves. The protagonist presses the wound and says that he won't accept the deal for only 3 stamps. Dongzi refuses to show his album and says that if the protagonist takes everything, he will be doomed. There is no way to stay in the underworld without any stamps. So he makes it clear that his best offer is 3 stamps. The protagonist realizes that the guy will not change his mind and accepts. He says he was just joking, and from now on they can form a duo to complete the mission. Dronzer gets up and says he agrees because they are postmen with the same interests. Suddenly, the protagonist pulls out the knife and goes through the guy's neck. He says that his main interest is something else. Dronzer falls to the ground, and the notification informs that now the protagonist can choose a stamp from the postman's album or take all his credits. Zhao believes that at the moment stamp is more important and takes a look at Dongzi's album. He chooses the flying knife seal. This technique helps the user to be a first-class master in manipulating a flying knife. The protagonist says that it will be unbeatable if it combines with his other two at that moment. He realizes that it is getting late and tells Sualon to change. The girl obeys. The scene changes to a little later in the back kitchen. The disciple praises Chef. Praise for finding someone talented like Zhao. The man agrees that the boy is very good, but tells himself that he wouldn't have hired the protagonist if it wasn't for the masters praising his cooking recently. At that moment, the disciple says that the oil is running out again. Craze gets stressed and tells the protagonist to control the amount because that's not water. He says that the boy has already spent enough for 100 dishes. Zhao says that he really uses a lot of ingredient, but that's why the taste has improved. Craze remembers that his idea at the beginning was to hire the protagonist and then humiliate him in front of everyone. But the boy turned out to be better than he expected, and now he regrets it. The chef replenishes the oil and says he has his time. He starts to leave and leaves the kitchen to the protagonist. Zhao opens the album and laughs, saying that he has enough oil now, but wonders where the guys are. Suddenly, a voice praises his work environment, saying that it is better than theirs. Zhao turns scared and asks who they are. The blonde postman tells the protagonist to stop pretending that he did not understand, because he was the one who left a note saying that he had food. The guy adds that he wants food for living people. Zhao replies that he has the food. The guy says he can't believe it if he doesn't show him the album. The protagonist asks what will happen if he refuses. Suddenly, the black-haired mailman rushes to attack and says that the boy has no choice but to cooperate. Zhao dodges the attack and says that's what he thought. He takes the flying knife and advances towards the postman, but he dodges. The protagonist follows his plan to lose to the men and discover the power they have. At this moment, Zhao finds an opening and hits the player in the chest, but nothing happens. The blonde postman screams, and the player throws the protagonist away. Zhao falls to the ground, and the blonde guy puts his foot on top of him. The protagonist smiles, realizing that his plan worked, and now he knows the power of some seals. The black-haired postman curses the protagonist for deceiving them by saying that he would have food. The blonde-haired guy calls him by the name of Fima and asks him to calm down. Then he turns to the protagonist and demands to receive the food for free. Zhao answers what he should look for in hell. This makes the guy lose his patience, and he asks if the protagonist wants to be murdered. Zhao can't hold back his laughter hearing this and questions if he thinks he has the advantage. The boy then shows his album full of stamps. The blonde postman is incredulous without being able to say a word. Zhao deduces that the guys already know about the rule of getting a stamp after eliminating a player. He then says that even if the postman actually managed to murder him, still each one would only receive a food stamp. In the end, this fight would be a waste, and he expects the men to show some respect because he is the only one who has food here. Fima gets angry, and the friend asks him to stay calm because he is hearing footsteps. The protagonist smiles, thinking that everything went as planned. At that moment, the disciples enter the kitchen, and one of them asks Zhao to hurry up because they can't keep the masters waiting. The protagonist takes a plate and says that he was just waiting for the disciples to come and pick it up. He makes up an excuse, saying that it took him a while to prepare it because he ended up running out of firewood. The man asks who these guys are, and he replies that they are all his friends. He wouldn't have made the food if it weren't for their help. The postmen quickly understand that the protagonist is creating an alibi. If he disappears, the disciples will suspect them. Soon the mediums begin to leave the place and say goodbye to the protagonist. The postman asks if he knows what he is doing, and Zhao replies that the deadline of this mission is much longer than they think, and the only food they can get in this underworld is in their stamp album. Ugly, he feels that he is being threatened and starts to curse. The protagonist hits his face with the album and tells him to be quiet. The veins on the blonde guy's forehead start to pop, and he angrily asks what the protagonist wants. Zhao doesn't answer and starts to make a count. The guy then questions if a special stamp buys the food. The protagonist starts to take delicious dishes from the album and says that he is still a rookie, so he is not sure if a single special stamp will help him complete this mission. The guy decides to offer two, but that is still not enough, and the protagonist continues to count. The old postman asks him not to make things more difficult. Zhao only refers to himself as a rookie and says that the guy can try to attack him if he thinks it's easier that way. Without thinking twice, the man advances towards him with an iron bar, but for inches from his head. The blonde guy asks the protagonist to join his group. Zhao smiles as he gets what he wanted. He points to the plates of food and invites everyone to eat. The protagonist says that from now on, as they are a team, they will start preparing food for everyone. A little later, they finish dinner. The blonde guy tells Zhao that from now on, old Li will protect him. In addition, he received 2 special seals, and the group intends to complete the main mission together, so hopes that the protagonist does not get into trouble. Zhao agrees, and after that the guys leave, he picks up the album again and tells himself that he is eager to show his skills to these veterans. What the kid didn't consider was the disadvantage he would have by pretending to be a rookie. He ends up losing out on getting special stamps because he has to pretend he doesn't know what they mean. The positive part is that he took at least 1 special stamp out of this situation. Called Light Shield, it protects the user from damage caused from a distance. The second seal is Speed and can only be used at night. At this moment, Zhao remembers the plan of the blonde-haired postman named Wang Zhong. This guy intends to murder the bride directly and then set fire to the woodshed. This will all create a commotion, and they will have time to find a way out of the underworld. The protagonist doesn't think the plan is bad, but he knows that the guys intend to leave him behind, since they believe that he only has low-level seals. The protagonist laughs at this idea and says that he is the one who will leave those men trapped in the underworld. At that moment, the boy opens the box with Suolan's head and says that it is time for the show. The next day, Chef Craze walks through the courtyard when he suddenly smells osmanthus porridge. He sees the protagonist cooking and realizes that this is why this boy is better than him in cooking. Zhao greets him and says that he arrived early, then offers some of the osmanthus porridge he made. The chef thanks him and tells him that tomorrow his master will be officially accepted into the Bai family, so he will retire. But first he intends to put the protagonist in charge of the back kitchen. So he brought a very precious book for him. Zhao accepts and shouts. Surprised that this is a cookbook, Craze wishes him good luck at work and starts to leave the kitchen. The man is pleased to have found a successor. Zhao definitely didn't expect to receive such a gift before the big day. He is even moved by the chef's kindness. Craze listens to his words and asks, since when he became so dramatic. Suddenly a blade flies and splatters red liquid on everything. Meanwhile, outside, the disciples talk to each other about having left things organized for the event. One of them notices that the back kitchen door is open and asks who left it like this. He remembers that Mr. Craze hates that the door stays open. Suddenly, a guy passes at full speed past the man. The guys can't follow him with their eyes and shout that he's a thief. So they enter the kitchen to see what was taken. It was at that moment that they found Mr. Craze and the protagonist lying on the floor, on top of a puddle of red liquid. The chef could not more to be saved, and they turn their attention to Zhao, who is still alive, but the protagonist asks the men to leave him there and run after that thief. The 2 disciples obey, and the other stays behind trying to help Zhao. The boy asks the man leave him, but he insists on helping him. Suddenly, the protagonist shouts that the thief is returned. The moment the disciple looks at his head flies. Zhao cleans the knife and keeps it in his album. He gives a big smile, saying that the show will start. Meanwhile, outside, the disciples continue to chase the thief. The postman notice the commotion and wonder what happened. Another player appears and says that she was going to ask them this question. The woman complains that tomorrow is the wedding day and everything was peaceful, but now suddenly everything has changed. She is sure that this is their thing. The old man asks why the girl is blaming her group hastily. Faima also enters the conversation and remembers that this woman was part of Dongzi's group. He then asks where that guy is and says that he thinks he was the one who murdered him. This statement unlocks the girl's fury. But before something happens, everyone's attention is attracted to a man who runs past them. The thief appears, and as we can see, it is Dongzi. He throws the bag he carries to a hooded person. She holds it, and when she looks up, she sees that the guy has disappeared. The woman does not understand anything and asks where Dongzi went. At that moment, a disciple arrives accompanied by guards and sees the woman holding the bag. He quickly concludes that she works with the thief and orders the men to arrest her. The player from before takes action, and a movement of her hand is enough to beat those guards. Faima asks if the girl is crazy and says that now they will be framed. She just turns to Wang and says that he had better think of some attitude or everyone will be murdered. At that moment, the disciple arrives with more guards and says that everyone in this place is an accomplice of that thief. The postmen are surrounded. The old man tells Wang that they need to do something. because the girl is dragging them. Faima calls the girl by the name of Black Peacock and says that she must solve the problem by herself since it started. The woman just replies that they deserve it and questions if it wasn't her group that put a lot of kerosene in the woodshed. Wong is shocked to see that her plan has been revealed. At that moment, the disciples split up to go to the woodshed to prevent the fire from happening. The old man asks Faima not to let the men leave here. The guy obeys and starts to knock down the guards one by one. Faima keeps attacking while Wong decides to go burn the woodshed. He asks the old man to continue the plan and go get the protagonist. After all, there is no way they can continue without food. The guards notice Wong running towards the warehouse. The old man takes an iron bar from the album and deals with the disciples. From afar, the protagonist realizes that the smoke has already started. He holds Tsuelan's head while thinking that psychics are the hardest to eliminate. Tsuelan can still manipulate her body even after being decapitated. The protagonist was able to take Dongzi's head and match it with the girl's body. That's why she was able to impersonate him in that accident in the back kitchen. Tsuelan decided to participate in this plan because he intends to recover his body. At that moment, Zhao leaves the girl's body behind still with Dongzi's head and runs to the courtyard, determined to complete the mission.